Uncommon Sense with Junia Doan, sharing the wisdom and insight of those who have been there and done that.
Hello everyone and welcome back. My guest today, Annette Kirk, is someone I've known for a very long time and admired for a very long time. Her enthusiasm, her clarity of purpose and education, and her commitment to extending her husband's philosophical legacy has been a core part of her life together with her family. Annette.
Good morning, Junia. Thank you so much for inviting me here.
I'm glad that you're part of my life and our life here at Uncommon Sense. Mm-hmm. When things go wrong in life, what philosophy do you have, or how do you approach it?
What do I think about
yes.
the events and how to cope with them and
right.
what informs me?
Yes.
Well, you know, I'm really glad you asked that question, because I think we have a tendency to just keep on moving all the time, and I'm a take-charge person, so therefore that's what I do. I react to crises or events by always just sort of deciding, all right, a plan. What do we do? Where do we start? How do we manage? And then after it's over, you sort of reflect and think upon it and wonder, how did I do that? Where did I find the strength to go on? And in one sense, I do believe that there are different personality types, and so that therefore I guess I am fortunate that I do have the kind of personality that likes to immediately be in the middle of things that are happening and to feel a sense of purpose by being able to settle some problems. But then you do reflect and you think, what keeps you going? What motivates you to do all this? And so I think it's probably your philosophy of life. And in my instance, I think in historical terms. And so therefore I think of how we are part of this great mystery, and that there is almost an eternal contract between those who have gone before, those who are here, us today,
currently
and
alive.
those who are yet to come. And so if you think largely in this fashion, you know that you're passing through here, and that you don't feel a sense of loss or ownership because you are just one person, but you can make a mark while you're passing through. And so that comforts me, the idea that I'm in this great chain of being. And I had a wonderful professor in college one time who taught us about Alexander Pope's chain of being and Edmund Burke's eternal contract, and those things really resonate with me, and I've made them my own, and so that does help.
When you see yourself as part of a chain, right, passing through, but making your mark, what has drawn you to make your mark, and what surprises did you have along the way to that?
Well, I guess everyone has the surprise that you think that you've planned things and that you're in control and such, and then of course you find you're not. Life has its challenges, and of course having children is the one huge area in one's life where you learn so much through children. I have the first daughter who's now 35 years old, my daughter who has 2 children of her own, and she said, "Mom, all the things you wanted us to learn, I am now learning through my children." And I thought, well, that's very important. And she said, "You wanted me to read this book and that book, now I'm reading it to them." And so that she feels a sense there of accomplishment, because she, and also satisfaction that all those things that we wanted in her life that maybe she didn't do at certain times, that now she is doing. So I think all the things you do teach your children, that eventually, you know, it does work out. I guess I'm fond of the saying that Julian of Norwich in, I think it was the 15th century or so, said that, and all things shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. That's difficult sometimes to find, and when life throws you curves. But I think that probably the first thing I do after going into action and is that I reflect, and reflect on the fact that we have a center And if we can get in touch with that center and keep our stability and saneness in the world that is ever-changing, that we will be able to cope with this. I had, for instance, when our house burned down, which was a very traumatic experience, it happened on Ash Wednesday at midnight, which is also very sort of meaningful in a way. My husband was teaching the poem Ash Wednesday by T.S. Eliot at Olivet College in the Congregational Church there, and he was speaking about it, and that very night, Ash Wednesday came to us. And so the reaction was to reflect that, yes, it was a wonderful house, and many generations, 5 generations, dwelt in it, but that there's a time for building, and a time for going on, and a time for renewing, and that my children now will know the new house and the one that we planned together. It's on the same ancestral land, so we're fortunate with that, but it was a shock, and fortunate that the children were able to get out. So in effect, I was left with a sense of gratitude because I was grateful for our being alive and the children being fine, because you know what could have happened is always more frightening. I guess one of the things I always cope with is thinking of the most awful things that could happen, and then when they don't happen, then you're relieved that they don't happen, and you say, oh, my girls say I have a great imagination. Mom, that's not going to happen. And I say, well, you never know, you know. And then when it doesn't, you're happy.
Who was with the children in the home?
We were there. I was there. And
Russell?
And Russell was away.
Right.
He was away teaching. And we had a young woman that stayed with us, Grasha, for many years. And so she and I were able to get the children out. But what I didn't know was that I was pregnant with Andrea, the daughter you know, most of all, so that even though the house was, in effect, taken from us, we were giving something much more valuable, and that was the child who was born just almost 9 months later, practically. So that was, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. And then you just think how fortunate you are that, you know, your priorities get put in place, because the house was wonderful. And
yes, it was.
And it was a great house, and was architecturally interesting, and
yes,
we put a lot of time and effort into it.
Had a lot of pride in it.
Yes, we had a lot of pride, because it was his great-grandfather built the house, and he founded the village of Macosta, plotted it all out, and was the first village president, and all of that type of thing. And
continuity, as you were saying.
Great continuity, and that also is a comfort. But there's still continuity. And now we still have the new house, which is a wonderful thing, and we have our seminars there, and our children come home and love this house. In fact, Andrea never knew the old house.
Right.
So she loves this one. So Russell wrote a wonderful column, a newspaper column, after it happened, and he reflected exactly on that. There's a time for building and a time for changing. Even though I'm conservative in most things, I do believe that in traditions, but I also believe that change is a means of our preservation also.
Talk to me a little bit about that, change as a means of our preservation.
Well, you have to know what to conserve, and as opposed to just tradition. There are traditions and there are traditions, and some of them are healthy and some of them are not. Yeah. And so every age has to decipher and discern what is it in our age that we need to continue and to keep. And I believe that there are certain permanent things that we should keep. And I think that if we understand and try to practice these permanent things, then they enrich our lives. And among those permanent things are the traditional 4 virtues, the classical virtues of, they are justice, prudence, fortitude, and temperance. And it's easy to say, but hard to do.
Right.
You know? And then, of course, the Christian or cardinal virtues of faith, hope, and charity. And we know that love is the one thing that we should and must and need to have in our lives, and that is what enriches all of us, is the love of family and of community. And of course, you know that yourself in our own lives. We've talked about that. The idea that by going out of yourself, that you find yourself. That just contemplating your navel, you know, as some people do with just psychological type of things, which can be helpful, but at the same time, just by losing yourself, you find yourself, and you share with others and in community. and you need relationships. And so
Now,
love.
what kind of relationships
involves
do you think people need?
Well, I think they need a relationship with a transcendent order. And that is, and I say transcendent order as opposed to using the term Jesus or God, because I do believe that that's my tradition, but at the same time, I believe that it broadens one to realize that many cultures and peoples have had different types of understandings of the divine. And so that therefore, a transcendent order is something outside of yourself and larger, and to which you feel you're in a tradition and in relationship to a creator of some kind. And so that I believe that you need that, because if you only have yourself, I mean, I think it's very difficult for people who believe in nothing. That I think they have a hard time because what is there after this? And so that I think if you understand that there's a providential order, that's the first thing. And then from that flows everything else. Everything then, there's a hierarchy, as it were, and your family, and at first your family, of course, always, and your community, and you can keep extending yourself if you first have those things in order. There's a centering and a focusing on the eternal, and then you see your husband in the light of that, and then, of course, the subsequent children who come, and then your relationships with everybody else. So I think we need these close relationships with people and families. And of course, the closest relationship now that my husband has gone on in 1994, the closest and the one most rewarding for me is with my 4 daughters and their families and children.
When someone loses a spouse, it just seems to be a crushing a loss, if in fact you cared about the spouse, right?
Yes.
Which you and Russell clearly had a great love for each other.
Yes, we did.
What did you go through, or how did you think about it, or how did you even live it? I mean, I think everything you can know but not know. You can know but not want.
Exactly.
You can know but reject, you know.
That's true. Very true. So, well, I think everyone has different experiences, although the same, and that is that in our instance, Russell and I were fortunate enough to have been married 30 years. And since I was 20 years younger than he, I now see the hand of God in it because of the fact that I am now able to continue his work. And so that I am now able to establish what he worked so hard at doing, which is transmitting certain truths to the rising generation, as he used to call them, that the rising generation keeps rising, and they are you know, in need of knowing certain things in community, and that will keep civilization alive. And so that he felt that we should pass these truths on, and I married him because I felt the same way. He was the only person I ever met that felt the way I did about having a goal, a purpose in life, and meaning in the sense of a larger one than just our families and even our communities, but that we would think of civilization. And so that's kind of what we were joined together in our work for the 30 years, and we had many, many students live with us and seminars, and he lectured, and I was involved in all of that work. And so that it was like a natural continuum after he died to go on with it, which is what I'm doing, which gives my life a lot of meaning.
Right,
and hopefully
great depth of meaning.
Bringing it meaning to other people. But as far as the particulars, the relationship, and how does one get through the part when you know someone's actually going to die. And in our instance, we did know that. We had preparation. So we felt blessed in the sense that we had the time together the last few months. He died of congestive heart failure, and at home and with the family, and so that, and because of our beliefs and such, we were able to discuss this. And so that it takes a big burden off one if you can talk about such things. Most people don't and can't, or won't, and so that, or just don't know how to. And so in our instance, we were able to give it a larger picture, and I mean, we came at things through literature and history, and he gathered the 4 girls and told them, girls, there are 4 books that you should read if you wish to be wise in life. And so we quickly scribbled down, what he was saying. And he said that you should read The Little Fir Tree by Hans Christian Andersen, because I'll give you a list.
Thank you, Annette, my teacher.
Right. Russell wrote...
Thank you, Russell.
Yeah, that's right. He wrote a book just at the end called The Sword of Imagination, which is his memoir of his life. And in the last chapter, he writes, "Is life worth living?" And then he mentions these 4 books, which are The Little Fir Tree, because there's always an anticipation in the tree that something greater is going to happen, and so they don't enjoy life and here and now, because there's always something going to be over the rainbow waiting for you, as opposed to understanding that eternity is here and now.
Right.
And that what we're experiencing even now as we talk about these things is in effect a timeless moment.
Yes.
A moment in time that
I think about it.
we will both reflect on and enjoy, and be in joy later because of the time that we are sharing together, discussing these sort of profound questions, you see. And so that's one of the books, and then the other 3 were Tree and Leaf by Tolkien, which is less known of his works, one of the lesser knowns, and then he said Pilgrim's Regress by C.S. Lewis, which is for a more mature understanding, not Pilgrim's Progress by Bunyan, but Pilgrim's Regress by, I suppose both of them would be wonderful to read, and then the last one, I believe, was a George MacDonald book, I think it's The Secret Garden, I think it is, by George MacDonald, if I haven't gotten that wrong. But at any rate, he was able to convey that to the girls, and he blessed each one of them and told them that he would look over them, and that, he loved them, and they said the same, and so that, take care of your mother.
Right. Always that important thing.
I have to tell him to take care of Mom.
Right. A little coaching. Right.
Exactly, and so that it was a joyful time. We had many wonderful moments, and when Russell finally did come to his death that morning, it was a Friday morning, and the sun was out, and we had just spoken that morning because he'd been listening to the radio, Blue Lake Radio, as a plug for Blue Lake Public Radio. He had a radio in his bed, and he would listen to that in the news in the morning, and he had heard on the news that the Pope had fallen and hurt his leg. This is way back in '94, and so when I brought his breakfast, he said, "Now we must pray for the Pope because he hurt his leg." And so that's the last thing we did, was we did pray. And then we had breakfast, which was amazing. He wasn't supposed to eat all the things you're not, supposed to. And he said, by that, "Oh, forget it." And so bring me chocolate chip cookies and custard pie. Right. So, we did do that. And then he just, sort of fell asleep. And my daughter, Monica, came down where she had just been up all night long, actually watching him, because we shared the time in the room, and she came back and held him and sang all the songs that when she was a child that he had sung to her. So that we were very fortunate. Do you see how blessed I am?
Yes.
God is good, and this was a wonderful death. And so we have that memory, and I sympathize so much with people who are shocked and have a terrible time. My father died just suddenly like that, so I've experienced that
both
part
sides.
too.
Yes.
Exactly, yes, and my mother from cancer and that kind of thing. But always this idea of that we should be grateful for at least the years given us.
Right. The time and the relationship.
And the relationship and the love that we've known.
Right.
But then there's a real obligation, if you have been loved, to pass that on.
Yes.
And so this, not only the love, but the transmission that I'm trying to do of learning that Russell told us about, and he told us about the permanent things and tried to teach that to the young.
And the sense of civilizations, that flows through, the sense of reception and obligation,
duty.
to
duty,
to transmit or to give, whether it's love, information, values,
standards, norms, morals, which we need. Russell was a definer of terms, and one of the terms he would define was decadence, and he would say decadence is a loss of an object. It means that you forget what it is you're supposed to be doing, and so you decay from within. And so what we've called our center is the Center for Cultural Renewal, which is what we're trying to do.
Yes.
Which I know you're very involved in and do lots of. Right.
I just wondered, I mean, Russell was such a wonderful person to talk to, not to have him to talk to, you know, to have people in your life that you can really talk to.
That's so true.
You know, that light a bigger world for you. It's like really a loss. And then I'm thinking of all the people who never had it to begin with, you know, don't have people in their lives who can say something like that.
Tribulations and trials and difficulties with their husbands even, you know. It'd just be awful. But that is the biggest loss from my point of view, is the idea of talking to Russell and sharing with him this larger picture and understanding, because you're absolutely right, most people don't have that type of insight into human nature.
Repetitively. I mean, you would talk to him, he would really think, pause, think, right, comment.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
And it was distilled in just a few words.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But it was...
you knew you were getting wisdom.
Right. A world of meaning.
Exactly. But I had a relationship with him for 30 years. So that was a blessing. And so now that his voice is silenced on earth, in a sense, at least physically, but he's being heard all the time, because we are publishing all of his works, and we're discussing them in our seminars.
Right.
And so we even have tapes of him, and so that I can hear him.
Do you feel he's looking out after you?
No question about it. No question about it.
Do you have signs of that?
I do. You know, Russell loved ghosts, remember?
Yes, I do.
And recently someone said that to me, well, have you experienced any, you know, ghosts or anything? And I remember saying to Russell, now, Russell, don't you dare come back and scare me, you know?
Right.
And he just smiled. And, but instead, what's happening is, rather than frightening things, is just very affirming things. All kinds of things. There, when I will go to the library, which is his library with his 10,000 books and such, exactly, a book will just appear, or I'll open a book to a page, and something there I need to know, or something happens.
The right thing comes.
The right thing happens, exactly, and I just smile and go on. Or I'm wondering how to handle this, what to do. Suddenly I'll pick up a newspaper and read a story about somebody who has this problem. Or I'll have a chance conversation on the telephone, you see? And it's just, and in fact, my friends have already gotten onto this. And they say, oh, Russell's talking again. Yeah. And because
how do they know that when you're talking?
Well, because they say, and you wanted to know that, didn't you? And then something happened. And, you know, I mean, and of course they're in my world. My friends are in our world, and they were in Russell's orbit. They were too. And that's why it's wonderful, because he brought all of us together. And you know, as you know, he was a very shy, quiet man.
Very
and
humble.
So he would just say certain things. He wouldn't talk all the time, which is probably just as well, because I talk all the time, right? But he was a great listener. And I would ask him...
It must have changed you in some real way, though. Living with someone like that would. I mean, maybe make you more reflective, perhaps?
Oh, absolutely, no question. I had the potential for it. But that at the same time, the exposure I had to the books and the thought and the example and everything did, I know, make me a deeper person. And now that's something you have to live up to, though, because you can slip back, you know?
Yes.
Right? And just kind of be normal, or, you know, not an example as you should be. And so that you have to continually realize that there's a standard to which you have to adhere. And that, and it's not a crushing thing or something, you know, it's an inspirational thing. Russell used to write about the Romans, and he said that the Romans wrote history to inspire the young. We write history today to sort of just tell facts or figures or whatever. It's without...
or bash America.
Exactly, or shame, or bring down.
Bring down.
To destroy. And he said, always, the Romans wanted to inspire the next generation, the young, and Livy and Tacitus and Virgil and all these people that he was so fond of and wrote about in his book called The Roots of American Order, because he said so many of our founders and our early people and the schools, as you and I have spoken about many times, the schools and education were geared that way. The classical learning that were in our early schools, and that our founders who wrote the Constitution and such all were filled with. And that now in the schools, study of history is practically negligent. I mean, it's non-existent. It's very temporal. It's very...
yes, it's current events. Right, right.
And it's terrible because at a time like this when we really have to study geography because everything's moved around since the Soviet Union broke up and all of the new states have come. I mean, the children have to know that history, and it's a sad thing. And so, in effect, groups like ours, our little cultural center, are trying to be para-academic because so much that is not being done in the schools, you then have to go out and found other groups to do that work. And television is another incredible medium for that, because the history channels and also just interviews like this that you're trying to carry on the great tradition of understanding the past so we can forge the present and future, you see. So that whole idea that we're part of something more, that we are integrated and you know, into our communities, into our culture, into our time, and that those understanding should be passed on to the young, because otherwise they do feel alone, and I think the worst possible thing.
And rootless.
And rootless, exactly. That's why Russell wrote The Roots of American Order, he's saying. Where did we get our understanding of order, justice, and freedom from? And he traces it through 4 cities. He starts with Jerusalem because of the understanding of the concept of one God, because before there were many gods. And so he starts with the understanding we received from Jerusalem. Then he goes to Athens with the idea of understanding of philosophy and thinking, and then he goes on to and democracy in Athens, form of government, and then he goes on to Rome, of course, and the heroic virtues that they tried to convey, and also some of the things these places didn't do right. You know, so I mean, you know, in Rome they reached too far and became with hubris, overweening arrogance.
Decadence does not work.
Decadence, exactly. And then, of course, to London he goes, and to the Magna Carta and that stand, all culminating in the Constitution in Philadelphia.
I want to thank my guest, Annette Kirk, for being with me today and for sharing. What we've learned from Annette is that it's important to be centered. It's important to act when you have personal crises. But it's also important to see yourself in the continuum of life, that you have roots in the people who have passed before you and you have benefited from them, hopefully, and that you also have obligations to the current generation and beyond, and that virtue counts. Her association with her husband was so important in her life. So one of the things you could say about Annette is she's the model for someone who chose wisely in marriage, which is a good thing to do.
Remember that, girls.
Right, remember that, girls, right. Because you're with them a long time.
That's right.
And that what they have to say can enlarge your life or not. And if you can do that, you become a bigger person. But also what Russell said has much meaning for our civilization, you know, as you just heard Annette recap. So as you go around your life, think virtue, right? Think relationships, think gratitude. You heard her talk about her house, but she's, you know, it's a time for change and it's a time for renewal. And think about the flow of life, because I think that's what we're hearing here. The flow of life, maintain the positive, have those strong virtues, feel connected, choose wisely in your friends and relationships, and basically hold yourself to a high standard. So when you see Annette around the area, please do thank her for sharing. And remember, kindness counts. Thank you for joining us.
To share your comments and suggestions, contact Junia. The email address is juniadone@aol.com, or write to Post Office Box 169, Midland, Michigan 48640.